Hello again, and greetings with peace, unity, light, and love. Let me begin, please, by reviewing a few of the pointers offered in part 1 of this series. First, there are 5 methods of teaching non-duality. Here, the direct path method is used in conjunction with the Nisarga Yoga. So, anything heard on these videos that runs contrary to what you've been taught, then your teacher or the writers you've read likely use one of the other 4 methods and likely do not use the Nisarga Yoga. Secondly, while some, such as the Neo-Advaitins, suggest there's no journey to take at all, others speak of a journey merely for the sake of discussion. If you can't relate to such terms as journey or path, then let it be said that the passage or the movement as discussed here is merely a shift that addresses the issues dealing with the consciousness, the brain in an elemental plant food body, and the so-called mind. First, the consciousness is rooted in the absolute. The brain is rooted in the elements, and the mind is rooted in programming and conditioning and domestication and acculturation and indoctrination. That means that the consciousness is natural prior to manifestation, that the brain is all natural, but that the mind is quite unnatural. Hence the pointer from part 1, noting that it's been said that the main problem among humans centers in the mind. Consider this, if you will. All living things on the planet that have a brain, nevertheless, do not have a mind, except for humans. All manifestations of consciousness are pure or unblocked, except for that manifested in human bodies, which is blocked or adulterated by, as mentioned, programming, conditioning, etc., beginning in the first years of the manifestation. As for a journey or a movement, in the case of humans, the consciousness journeyed or moved from a field of energy, manifested in plants, and was then transferred to a body come consciousness. Next, the shift that involves the movement of the conscious energy along a path, if you will, is a passage that moves it from an absolute field of unadulterated energy to being manifested in a human body, to being programmed and conditioned to the point that the consciousness becomes so blocked and so adulterated that it believes it really is all of the false identities assigned to it, that it believes the false content placed in a part of the brain called the mind, and that it finally believes that it's a body that can and will have eternal continuity. It is natural for forms with brains to abide under the auspices of the brain and the instincts or the inner resource or the inner guru. It is unnatural for a form with a brain to abide under the auspices of the fictional and false content of a mind, or to abide under the auspices of consciousness after it has been blocked or adulterated. Yet notice that the non-realized masses who desire what they call peace of mind are unaware that the prerequisite for peace is the unblocking of the consciousness and the discarding of all false beliefs that are stored in the mind. That is why the pointers offered here that there's no such thing as peace of mind. There's only peace if you're out of your mind. Note how the masses reach a point where they begin to long for some way to end the chatter of 1,000 monkeys that's going on endlessly inside their heads, when the root of the chatter is the content of the mind itself, which they don't know. So the steps of a journey, or the steps in a movement, or the steps in a shift, which some non-duality teachers speak of, is really a multi-step process of taking the full dosage of the ultimate medicine to address all of these issues that generate the discontentment and confusion and chaos and misery and suffering that characterize the ultimate sickness. What's included among those issues? 1, the consciousness becomes trapped in the confines of a body. So there's the uncomfortable sense of restriction after an eternity prior to manifestation when it had run free. Imagine what would happen to a deer that had roamed an entire forest for years and was subsequently trapped in a net and then locked inside a cage that was so small that it couldn't even turn around freely. How can there possibly be any peace when the consciousness, like that deer, has been removed from its natural environment and has been robbed of the opportunity to abide naturally? It is realization that frees up the consciousness and allows it once again to experience that sense of soaring, of being free. Number two, how can there possibly be any peace when a relative existence is being controlled by the content of a mind, when the content of the mind is really just a collection of false ideas and concepts and beliefs? It's impossible. Number three, how can there possibly be any peace when humans, unlike every other living creature on the planet, has been robbed of the chance to abide naturally and is being trained and even forced to abide in an unnatural or a supposedly supernatural manner instead? Issue 4. If abiding unnaturally, or if constantly working to try to live supernaturally, then mere living is made into a job unto itself. Completing the 7-step journey, or completing the full process of restoring the consciousness to its free and unadulterated condition, by whatever name you might use to describe the process, is a major step toward being freed from the symptoms of the ultimate sickness. And being rid of the mind-based sources of misery and suffering is another major step toward being freed from the symptoms of the ultimate sickness. Remember that pain is rooted in the body, but misery and suffering are rooted in the mind. The non-duality journey or movement or shift or whatever you might call it is about being free. And freedom begins by unblocking the consciousness, and it continues by being freed from the influence of the false ideas and concepts and beliefs and personalities that are stored in the mind and that generate a sense of entrapment and that generate misery and suffering. Awareness, full realization, can relieve persons of all the theory-based learned ignorance and allow them to relax and take it easy and play and enjoy pleasures and entertainment, all of which combined contribute to a state of bliss now. The peaceful nature of your original state is available also now. If full realization happens, and if the awareness that was originally not aware of itself or anything else suddenly becomes aware of itself and suddenly becomes aware of its original nature and then abides in that fashion for the remainder of the manifestation. The result, a sense of boundlessness, of limitlessness, of expansiveness, of spaciousness and roominess, of vastness, of suddenly being unfettered, unrestrained, and therefore able to move about freely. The discussion will continue in part 3 of this video series. Until then, peace, unity, light, and love to you. Goodbye.